Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for the new Essential Maths Core for WA. My name is Nicole Donnelly, and I am the Education Sales Consultant for Cambridge, located in Perth. Before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press and Assessment acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I'd like to welcome our author team, David Greenwood, Jennifer Wreford, and Justin Robinson, along with Claire Murray as our lead publisher. At the end of today's webinar, I will give you a quick overview of what is included with our digital resources. Please submit your questions throughout the webinar, as we will have some time dedicated to answer these at the end. Now it is time to start the webinar.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome, and it's great to be with you this evening after your busy day at work. As Nicole said, I'm David Greenwood, lead author for the Cambridge series, and my job today to talk to you a little bit about what the core series is, why we're going to use core, and some of the key features. Now, many of you would be familiar with the aspects of the WA curriculum, and indeed the Cambridge Standard series, all implemented for 2026. And many of you might also be familiar with the Cambridge Core Series Edition 1 for the Australian curriculum, which you might have been using over many years. But with the introduction of the new Australian curriculum a couple of years ago, version 9, and now the Western Australian curriculum, it was necessary for us to update the core series and to make sure that it complemented the standard series and include all the new features. So what is the core series? Well, the core series is designed to cover all the curriculum content for the Western Australian syllabus, including content to meet all the financial literacy, the modelling, and the digital content as well. For example, Pythagoras has moved from year 9 to year 8, algebra has been strengthened, time zones is now in year 7 and 8, and we've got the optional content at 9 and 10. So all that work was done for the standard series for 2026, and this is also being done for the core series as well. It's a series of texts that run alongside the standard series, but offers significantly more accessible content and resources for those students who need more support, who might need or might be aiming for, say, a foundation, essential, or applications. And Jen will discuss more about senior mathematics pathways a little bit later in this webinar. The core series was designed for a high level of differentiation, particularly for lower to standard ability students, and it offers clarity as to which lessons teachers might like to include regarding revision, core or extension or optional material. Now, in terms of differentiation, this is one of the big keys for the core series, because the core series can work in tandem with the standard series and help to offer a wide range of differentiated learning pathways. So at one level, we have this macro level of differentiation where teachers can choose which series to use. That's the standard series for middle to upper level students, or the core series. At level 2, then teachers can choose what course they're going to be using within the text. And this is where they might use our classification system to help you choose which sections teachers will use in their work programs. And then the more micro level of differentiation comes from the work programs within the text and within the sections, where students can work from an easier or more challenging selection of problems from each exercise. The classification system for core aims to help teachers choose sections for their classes with these classifications. So consolidating, these are sections which revise key content from previous years. The core sections, naturally, directly covering the WA curriculum. The Gold Star sections covering WA curriculum but are judged as more challenging from an author's perspective and teacher's perspective. And there are some optional and extending sections as well, which correspond to some optional content in the WA curriculum or some of the content in the Australian curriculum that's not included in the WA curriculum. It's important to note, I think, at this point that the correlation between the content for the core series has a very strong correlation with the standard series, especially for years 7 to 9. And this would make it a lot easier for teachers then to use these series, the core and the standard, in tandem, and allow students to move from one level to another if they were moving from one class to a different level class in the following semester or the following year. So why would a school choose the core series? Well, here are some of the reasons. But generally speaking, the overall language is simpler in the core series. The key vocab are listed, highlighted, and there is a glossary as well. Many of the problems in the exercises have special hints to help students move forward. Exercises have been created with simpler starting problems and a gentler rise in difficulty as they work through the curriculum proficiency strands. There are more consolidating sections to revise and catch up key content. Examples are positioned as well carefully via and inside the exercises and are written to slow down the pace with the learning that goes on. So the print book structure tries to reflect this with many features that some of you would be familiar with, but these have all been updated for the new WA curriculum. So the classification system is there, the 2 working programs in the core series, so you can choose an easier pathway or a more challenging pathway through each section. The learning intentions, key ideas, the proficiency strand grouping, positioned examples, the hints, and the gold star challenge questions in each section are still there and have been refined for the new curriculum. In terms of the print version, these are some of the features which you should or you'll be encouraged to have a look at if you have time. So we have the modelling activities which have been updated for WA. The Maths at Work investigations are still there. We have a new digital tools and computational thinking investigation. Puzzles and games, the mind match summaries, chapter reviews, all these things like the success criteria, which is new actually as well. All these features are in the print version. In terms of the digital, we have a range of features in the course, some of which were there before and have been refined, and other new ones. So, for example, we now have fully worked solutions for every problem right through the series. A set of new skill and drill sheets which accompany each exercise. We have extra modelling tasks beyond those in the print. PowerPoint lessons, which I'll talk about in a minute. Assessment rubrics are new. The diagnostic tool will be new. Many of you may have used that this year in the standard series, and that now has been adapted for the core. The online teaching suite that Nicole mentioned, and of course the interactive textbook. In terms of modelling, these modelling tasks have been adapted for the WA curriculum, where the sections have been divided up using the correct language, with analysing and representing, solving the problem, interpreting and verifying and communicating. And the structure involves a context, a preliminary task, and an extension activity to really broaden the experience for students with that approach to modelling, which is set out very clearly in the WA curriculum. We also include now a digital tools and computational thinking activity, again with a context, a getting started activity, and then a using digital tools where spreadsheets, dynamic geometry and graphing software might be used, and where an algorithm might be used as well to explore cases, run a simulation, or solve a problem numerically. This is usually a 2 or 3 page activity at the end of every chapter, like the modelling tasks. One brand new resource, which we're developing and have developed for core, is the skill sheet. One printable skill sheet, one piece of paper, two sides mainly, that teachers could use as a short quiz, end of lesson, start of the lesson, or even a homework quiz. And these questions are strongly linked to text examples and success criteria. The marking rubrics have been developed for all the investigations, the modelling, the investigation tasks, and the digital tasks that I mentioned earlier. They are in Word format, so teachers can adjust it like many of the other resources available. The PowerPoint slides are a big addition to the standard and the core series, where all content from the beginning of a section right through to the exercise questions is presented in an interactive PowerPoint for teachers to control, including things like the key ideas, the examples, the solutions to the examples, and the now you try questions that are linked to the examples with answers. The diagnostic tool is another feature that's been developed over many years, and this accompanies the standard series, but also now the core series. And it's another feature that many of you may wish to digest over more time. It's something we've been working on for many years, and essentially is a digital tool which is a complete and digital auto-marked assessment system for teachers to assess and provide feedback to students on whatever content they wish to choose from the text or the Australian or WA curriculum in this case. And so they are some of the main features of the core series. And now I am going to pass on to Jennifer, who's going to talk a little bit about how this is useful in terms of the pathways to senior mathematics. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Wreford. I'm a maths teacher here in Perth. And at my school, we're currently having conversations with our Year 10 students about subject selections and choosing the right courses for them as they move into senior school. And what's pretty clear is that students all have different goals for upper school. Some of them have a really clear idea of what they want to do, others have no clue. But most schools seem to preach that students should be choosing the highest level maths that they can succeed in, whether that's methods, applications, or essentials. And as teachers, we want students to be as prepared as possible for their senior school pathway, giving them the prior knowledge they need and opportunities to develop the mathematical skills relevant to each of the different courses. So on the slide that you can see, the primary focus of the core series of books is to prepare students for applications or essentials. Although you might have students aiming for methods in your classes, these are not the primary demographic these books are designed for. For those students who are aiming to choose methods with or without specialists, they will be best supported by the standard level essential maths series. We know that students who undertake essentials in year 11 and 12 are those students who previously found maths challenging and are often needing practice of basic skills and lots of repetition. We want them to be numerically literate, to be able to keep track of their finances and feel they can make decisions for themselves when they leave school. Some of these students may also need to achieve their OLNA for graduation, and being able to consistently practice these foundational skills across measurement, consumer arithmetic, and statistics is so important. And not all schools differentiate in the same way. And so it's important for teachers to feel they can use their professional judgment to make the best decisions for their students, selecting work that's accessible and relevant to them and where they're going to go next in their education journey. For students aiming for essentials, the core books can be used to focus on mastering fundamentals, including numeracy and OLNA practice where relevant. These students may not need the optional topics, but they're included for potential extension and differentiation. Thanks, David. Next slide. So for example, here's the table of contents for the geometry chapter from the Year 9 core book. As you can see, we have similar triangles listed as an extending option, as this is now Year 10 content, but it's also relevant to the scale factor and measurement topics now covered in the Year 11 applications course. Next slide. Similarly, this is the consumer arithmetic chapter from the Year 10 core book. We have all the new Year 10 curriculum, including a consolidation of percentages from previous years. This is a fundamental skill that some students are still mastering. A teacher can choose to spend more time on these initial exercises, really honing a student's ability to find 10 or 20% of an amount, as well as increasing or decreasing by a percentage, which is a commonly assessed skill in OLNA. The rest of the exercises follow the Year 10 curriculum and leads into the finance covered in essentials, such as budgeting. The gold star content here is present for teachers who may be looking to extend students and front load some understanding of comparing interest rates, which is part of that Year 12 essentials course, when some students start to use spreadsheets to see how interest grows over time, or how banks may increase or decrease their interest rates, and the impact this has on a person who may have invested or borrowed money, for example. Next slide. In the new West Australian curriculum for Year 9 and 10, SCASA has included this optional content. So this content is not mandatory to teach, but is provided to build and extend students' knowledge based on their interest, readiness, and preparation for senior studies. This optional content is labelled in the core series, matching those in the SCASA content descriptors. For example, solving simultaneous equations algebraically is now optional content in Year 10. It's included in the Year 10 core series for those students who are intending to study applications, so they can be exposed to these skills before they reach Year 11. Next slide. The mathematical thinking process and the statistical investigation process is a requirement of applications and essentials courses. For applications, investigations make up 20% of their marks, with specific reference to students reviewing the statistical investigation process. The implication being that they know what this is and have used it before they enter Year 11. It's an even larger proportion of the essentials course, where practical applications and statistical investigations have a 50% weighting, equal in proportion to the response tasks they complete across the year. The emphasis on students being able to choose the maths to solve a problem is not something they necessarily arrive at senior school with the skills to be able to do. Introducing the modelling strand to Year 7 to 10 is a step in the right direction for helping to upskill students to be ready for these investigations. The EST for the Essentials course often asks students to evaluate the use of the statistical investigation process. And I can speak from my own experience with marking and teaching Year 12 Essentials that the students don't typically do well at this, especially if they haven't used it prior to senior school. As has already been mentioned this afternoon, the modelling strand is included throughout the core series so that these students can be exposed to more open-ended problem-solving scenarios in an accessible and unintimidating way. Teachers can choose how they might want to use these modelling tasks with their classes. The modelling tasks give teachers a starting point. They're not designed to be assessments, but to expose students to some of the skills needed and give them opportunities to practice writing down their process in a logical way. Next slide. So this is one of the modelling activities from the Year 10 core book within the probability chapter. It's scaffolded to allow students a lower barrier for entry. However, teachers might choose to take out some of the structure once students are more familiar with the modelling skills. Additionally, this particular activity introduces students to the idea of a simulation, which comes up again in the Year 12 Essentials course. On the next slide, we have another example of a modelling activity, and this one is from the Year 9 core book around financial maths. Again, there's some structure provided in the book that teachers can choose to use or remove. Additionally, it provides opportunities for students to practice summarising important information provided in scenario, a crucial skill if students choose applications where all questions are embedded in a context with the students needing to decipher the relevant information needed to solve the problem. We're all starting from scratch this year with teaching modelling for the first time, so these resources can be a way for teachers to start introducing mathematical modelling to their classes, extending their understanding beyond just questions with one correct answer. Ultimately, as a teacher, you know the capabilities of your students and what level they need maths pitched at in order for them to either deepen their understanding or improve mastery of fundamental skills. These core books have been designed around supporting students as they move into senior mathematics, focusing primarily on applications and essentials pathways and giving those students the best chance at success. I'll now pass over to Claire, who is going to outline the new OLNA and numeracy support included in the series.
Thanks, Jennifer. So a new feature in this core series is the numeracy and OLNA support that we've built into the print and the digital resources. A significant proportion of students have to sit OLNA, and we know it's a big source of anxiety for students and teachers. And we were hearing from teachers that they needed more support, so which is why we decided to introduce it to this new series. I'm going to show you how our new print and digital components work together to support students' numeracy development and how that leads into OLNA readiness by year 10. And importantly, we haven't made this just about passing OLNA. We built numeracy in from year 7 onwards. Next slide, thank you. Even a question like this one from SCARS's sample tests looks straightforward, but there are multiple skills involved. For some students, their foundation skills are weak. They never properly grasp some primary maths. The other stumbling block with OLNA and numeracy in general is that students are struggling before the maths even begins. So that might be understanding the question, choosing the right method, and then carrying out the steps. So the issue isn't just that students need more practice, which is what we see in other resources. It's where they're getting stuck in the process. So what we've tried to do here is not just give more questions, but identify where students are struggling and then combine teaching, modeling, and practice to address that. Next slide, please. So in years 7 to 9, teachers are working with the whole cohort, so the focus is on building numeracy skills progressively and developing good problem-solving habits. If students improve these skills, they may be able to pre-qualify through NAPLAN in year 9 and then avoid OLNA altogether, which would be the ideal. By year 10, that shifts. Teachers know which students are working towards OLNA. In the print, but particularly we referred to OLNA directly where we haven't done that in the 7 to 9, not just where we talked about numeracy in those years. We reinforce the foundation skills and we build assessment strategies in that year 10 one. So the overall structure reflects that development, building up through years 7 to 9 and then resetting to the essentials in year 10 and applying them in an assessment context. Next slide, please, David. So the print material, this supports this in a practical way from year 7. It starts with key foundation skills and strategies with worked examples and the familiar now you try questions that we see elsewhere in the textbook. So students can immediately apply what they've seen. And we have this new feature, these notepad boxes, which you can see on the right, like a little spiral notepad. They highlight the essential points. They support revision and reinforcement, and for assessments, they can also be used as a kind of structured brain dump, which is an idea we got from a teacher who is an expert on teaching OLNA students. So the idea behind this is that these students struggle with working memory. So they might know a fact like whether to multiply by 100 or 1,000 to convert kilometers to meters, but when they're in the middle of a multi-step problem, it becomes harder to recall because they're holding other information in their mind. So we suggest to students this idea that at the start of an assessment, they spend a couple of minutes writing down key facts or strategies which they've learned from the notepad boxes, ones that they know, but when they're under pressure, they can't reliably access. So they write these down and then they can use it as a kind of reference sheet throughout the test, which frees up their working memory and they can focus on the problem itself. Next slide, please, David. Thank you. So we also introduce a simple problem-solving flowchart. So for teachers, this can be used to help identify where students are getting stuck through a sort of student-teacher conversation. You can ask them to read the question carefully and identify the important words. And then can the student reword the question, which demonstrates that they can understand what's being asked? Can they decide what maths is needed to solve the problem? And then can they do the maths? And then have they answered the question given? And does the answer properly apply to the original question? And then for students, they can use this flowchart as a clear step-by-step structure that they can follow when approaching unfamiliar problems. So it works both as a teaching tool and a scaffold for students' thinking. And then following this process, we have some detailed worked examples of OLNA-style word problems with now you try questions so students can practice immediately. Slide, please. So in the digital tool, we bring those concepts together in a simple structure. It combines a diagnostic skill check and then some targeted support and structured practice. So instead of students just doing more questions like in other resources, we can identify gaps and then work on those specific areas where they're struggling. Next slide, please, David. The skill check is the diagnostic component. It breaks problems into steps so we can see exactly where the student is getting stuck. So that, as I said before, that might be understanding the problem, choosing a method, or carrying out the calculation. And importantly, as you can see on the right, the students are shown the correct answer at each step. So once they've answered, it will then demonstrate, like if they got that wrong, it will show them the correct answer. So they can continue through the problem. This allows us to see how they perform in the later stages of the problem, even if they get stuck earlier on. So if they cannot understand the problem, we might find out later on that they're not good at interpreting a problem, but they can actually carry out the maths required later on. So instead of getting an answer right or wrong, sorry, back to the previous one, please, David. Thank you. We get a much clearer picture of both their strengths and where they need support. And we know that limited calculator access can be a major obstacle for students in OLNA. In the skill check, the final questions allow students to use their on-screen calculator. These questions mirror earlier ones, which allows you to compare performance with them without calculator access. So if a student performs much better with the calculator, this may indicate that number fluency is an area that the teacher needs to target. Next slide, please, David. So once those gaps are identified through the first skill check, the next step is targeted support. This is a combination of Hot Maths primary resources because we want to reinforce those foundation skills, and we know that Hot Maths already has great resources for this, that bridges the foundation gaps. And then we also have new walkthroughs that we're writing with accompanying videos, which are designed for OLNA style questions. And the walkthroughs, they follow the same problem-solving process as described in the print book. And you may be familiar with this if you've used walkthroughs in the rest of the series that they're on the ITV. They have conditional feedback, and that the feedback given, it depends on the student's answer. So they only see the extra scaffolding if they need it, which preserves productive students hit a complete dead end. So this follow-up work can be assigned by the teacher, but also if you have a student who's motivated or parents who are motivated to get them going, they can be student-directed. And then teachers can choose the topics manually, or they can be directed by results from the skill check, or if they do practice pathway, which I'll talk about next, they can do it following from results from that. Next slide, please, David. So the final stage is practice. So we have a bank of OLNA style questions that can be used for full 45 question tests on a range of topics that replicate OLNA. And there's an optional timer for this for the full test, because we know that managing time is a skill itself and something that we hear from teachers is something that students struggle with, so they need that practice. We can also create 10 question mini tests using the skill check results or the results from other practice tests that a student may have done. You can select topics for the mini test. Or you might just know that your class needs some practice on ratios, time, and reading tables, so you manually select those topics for a mini test. So there are multiple ways to create those tests. And like the targeted support, the walkthroughs, videos, etc., this can be assigned as follow-up work, or students can use them independently. And we have the reporting from the practice pathway that shows growth across attempts and highlights weak areas, which makes it easy to track improvement over time. Next slide, please. So the final piece on this is the reporting. So if you've been using our diagnostics tool already, this will feel familiar. Teachers can view results at different levels, from overall performance down to specific questions or skills. For example, from the skill check, you'll be able to see results by question for a whole class, as I've shown here. Or you can delve into the stages of the problem solving, that understanding, choosing the method, etc., that regularly trip a student up. And you can also compare those non-calculator versus calculator questions that I described earlier to compare a student's skills in that. So what this means is that you're not just seeing a score, but you're seeing patterns where students are struggling, what they're improving in, and how that changes over time. And Justin will talk about more in a minute, but that growth is so important for students to see. And this dashboard reporting is also where you'll assign the support activities and build your practice tests as a follow-up. As I said, this will be based on the results that they've done before. Next slide, please, David. So to pull that together, what we're trying to do is not just give students more practice, but build a clear pathway from identifying a problem through to improving it. On the print side, the focus is on building foundation skills, modeling problem solving, and developing consistent habits. And on the digital side, it becomes much more targeted. We can identify where a student's getting stuck, whether that's foundation skills, problem solving, or working with and without a calculator. And then we can give them focus support in those areas. So that's the hot math resources, walkthroughs, and accompanying videos, etc. This is quite different from OLNA itself, where the feedback schools receive is quite broad and doesn't really pinpoint where students need to improve. So what this tool does is provide much clearer an understanding of students' strengths and weaknesses, so teachers can respond more effectively. So there's more than just practice. It's about identifying the issue and supporting the skill, and then giving structured opportunities to apply it. And that makes OLNA preparation much more purposeful and manageable. I'm going to pass over now to Justin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Lovely to be with all of you who have joined, and thank you for your commitment to your students. And it's my pleasure to chat about something that the authors are so passionate about, Cambridge are so passionate about, and what David and Jen and Claire have been sharing. And I know it's important to you as well, and it's this topic of self-belief. The definition that we like that's included here to share with you reads like this: a student's working belief that with the right effort, support, strategies and time, I can make progress in maths. And I think the list there is interesting of the ingredients. Yes, of course, there's some effort required from the student. They need to feel the support from colleagues, from the textbook, from the materials, from the teacher, of course, some strategies to work with. And then, of course, it will take some time. With the right effort, support, strategies and time, I can make progress in maths. I know you would love each of your students to have that belief, but it's not easy. And so we realise that each individual student has a learning history. And on the next slide, David, the idea that you know this, that when a student enters your room, whether at the start of the year or the start of the term or the start of the week and so on, they've got a quiet calculation already running. Some of them are saying, I'm not a maths person. I'll be exposed. I'm going to fail again. Better not try too hard. Before we teach that first equation, that belief has already changed how they listen, how they attempt, how they ask for help, and how they recover from errors. And so this leads us to kind of suggest to you that this idea, David, that fostering self-belief is not about lowering expectations. As the Essential Maths authors, we believe so highly in high expectations. Yeah, that's a form of informing your students that we believe in you by setting these high expectations. We want students to be willing to engage with challenge. I love how you take the first three letters and the last three letters of challenge and you get the word change. Through challenge, you can change your ability. We want you to be challenged. The idea isn't click, 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 I've gotten through that. That's not necessarily learning. You're meant to be challenged. We want you to engage in this with this belief, with the ingredients I've just shared, that you will be able to progress. Thank you, David. So I wanted to share just 3 recent pieces of research. Often as a busy maths teacher, the ability to stay across some of the research is very challenging. This one here, a meta-analysis back in 2022. The highlight I wanted to share was this idea of being task specific. It's quite hard to change a student's overall global belief about their maths ability. What's much easier is to change their internal dialogue around a specific task. And some of your students will kind of go, oh, good, decimals are coming up. I'm good at decimals. Oh, I'm glad we're doing graphing. Or, oh, not this graphing chapter. I can't do graphs or something like that. So students, whilst they'll say global statements, often where you're trying to support their sense of self-belief is at the task level, the chapter level, the concept level. So, I can now solve two-step equations. I now understand now how to interpret this graph. So I think rather than trying to help a student change their global perception, that may happen over time, over the course of your year and the following year and so on. But what you're trying to endeavor is get them to feel that that specific area, that task is possible, and growing my self-belief. The next slide shows a 2024 meta-analysis in California, and it followed more than 200,000 students in years 4 to 7 as they moved to years 5 to 8. So 200,000 students, and look at the number blew me away when I read this research. I'm very passionate about the importance of a growth mindset, which is not just effort, but it's this idea of helping a student believe that their brain can change and they can learn and they can, develop new skills. But look at that students with a stronger growth mindset, and we're talking again the numbers of over 200,000 students, made an equivalent greater gains in maths of about 35 additional days of learning. That's getting somewhere close to another term, isn't it? It's like 7 or 8 weeks once you count a few days of excursions and bits and pieces. So we're almost getting, so this is not just a nice to have, this idea of fostering self-belief in your students. And I know you know that. And we've endeavoured to do all we can in the textbook and the resources and what Claire was sharing about the diagnostic tools to support you, to help you embrace this with your students. And then just going to last year, 2025, this is an ASA article close to home here in Australia by Dominique Russell. And her findings, a couple of little pullouts I have for you at the bottom of this slide, David, says that over 90% of students that they surveyed said they wanted to do well in maths. So for students who struggle, it is often an important reminder to us as their teacher that they're often not apathetic, lazy, disinterested and so on. They're often discouraged. Because you know the fact, it's hard not to love maths if you're good at it. That's kind of why you're a maths teacher, why we're maths authors. And it's almost near impossible to love maths if you're not finding success. But interestingly, it's not that they don't want to. Like almost all students that you're teaching, even those ones that are misbehaving, are disrespectful, look disengaged, deep down they do want to do well in maths. I know that's not necessarily helpful for you and some of the behavior and management that you're kind of managing, but I hope it does encourage you to stay curious, to be hopeful that, okay, can I give them some encouragement? Can I help them meet with some success? So 4 little steps that I'd like to go through. The first one, and again, I'm aware that you're very skillful and knowledgeable maths teachers, and we just hope that this gives you some ongoing inspiration in your work and your craft as a teacher. Engineering early success, not the idea that it's so simple and trivial that it's fake success, but it's the idea that now you might not be ready for the last step of what I've got today. It's going to be really hard at the end of this lesson. But let's start here because I know you know this step and we're going to move. And so when you're getting early success, you're getting movement. And so we're trying to encourage this movement to help the self-belief. Thanks, David. Praising the process is so linked to the growth mindset. It's not the global praise of how clever you are or how smart or that's amazing. It's very much trying to be specific and, where possible, specific to the process. Nice work on checking your answers. I like the way that you've lined up the equal signs. Well done on asking your friend for some help. I like the way you use different colour pens. You're giving specific praise to the process. As young people, as adults, as humans, we love praise. We love when someone notices something for it. So giving the process praise. 3 is normalizing the errors. person who's struggling often thinks that the error identifies them or it's part of their identity. This shows I'm hopeless at maths. That's not what errors do, because I make errors in maths and I don't feel hopeless in maths, but I still make errors in maths. And the error is the indication of, what's my next step? What do I have to try now? Because that didn't work. So errors give us this information for let's try something different. And fourthly, the idea to make progress visible. And I know that sounds so obvious. And it's that primary school teachers are better at it when they have portfolios and they show the parents and the students, look at your writing at the start of grade 2. Now look at the end of grade 2 and so on. Wow, look at the progress you've made. For students that struggle, they often find it very difficult to notice progress. And so it's the extra challenge for the teacher to make that clear for them. And it's a little bit like, the student doesn't really notice they're growing taller. They are, but grandma notices, or grandpa, because they only see them once every month or two. Wow, you've shot up. And so a little bit, the teacher's got to have that role. Wow, look at the progress you've made, how much neater you're setting it out, how clearer, how much, the steps that you're writing, and look at the success in this and so on. So making progress visible. I hope those 4 practical ideas are helpful. On my second last slide, I share this little bit of writing with you. For students who find maths difficult, self-belief is not a luxury. It's the bridge back into having a go. Our job is not to tell students they're good at maths regardless of the evidence. That's unhelpful. Our job is to design enough experiences of progress that belief becomes kind of reasonable, almost obvious. I can see it, I can feel it. And that's the purpose of the core series. That's the purpose of every one of the ideas that teachers have helped inform us and shared with us as we've continued to kind of try to improve and upgrade the resources for you. When students start to think, well, I can take the next step, they attempt more. They persist longer, they ask better questions, they recover faster. And of course, then you have a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're having a go more, they believe they can. And because they're having a go more, they can. And the results improve. So self-belief in maths is built when students repeatedly experience, I was stuck. I used a strategy. I got help, I improved. And that's different to, some of you might have thought, self-belief was kind of built when students kind of repeatedly got great marks in maths. And of course that's linked to it. But you're meant to get stuck. But you're meant to have strategies. You're meant to ask for help. You're meant to grow and improve. And that's so exciting and feels powerful to the student, feels amazing to the teacher, and partly why you're a maths teacher and love to see that growth. I finish with the closing slide, which just has my favourite little quote for teachers and for students. I think it's equally relevant for parents and for principals and so on. Is be prepared to be surprised. None of us know where we'll end up. None of us know our abilities. Our ability is unknown. Don't set limitations on your students and so on. Just be prepared to be surprised what may open up with inside them as they meet with some success, as they grow, as you endeavour to teach them as caringly, as compassionately, as with differentiation as possible. So I hope there's something there that just continues your spark for the amazing work that you're doing. And I'll pass back to Claire now to lead us in our Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Also, David and Jennifer, that was great. So I just encourage anyone who hasn't yet has a question but hasn't yet entered it into the chat to do so now. But for that, can I just ask David a question? So you've shown us how the resources work, but I'm wondering how that plays out in practice, like where might core fit into a school program? This is slightly answering a question from Elijah, who was asking how we would implement the core series into a mixed ability non-stream class without students feeling like they're using the dumb kids textbook.
Thank you for the question. It's a good question because I think there's a couple of ways that teachers or schools could use core. One scenario I think could be that the core series is used for whole classes. So a school at year 7 or year 10, for example, might have a couple of classes using the standard series and a couple of classes using core. So this would involve some level of streaming perhaps across the school, and I know some schools do that, and that's certainly one way that it could be used. The alignment between core and standard, especially in years 7 to 9, make this process fairly flexible. So if a student was using core at, say, year 7, and the courses were kind of designed together, as are the textbooks, then it's quite possible for schools to say, right, we can change your position in the school and we're going to use a standard series for you in the following year. That's less so in year 10, but certainly year 7, 8 and 9, there's much flexibility with the pathways there. The other way to do this is perhaps to have mixed ability classes where there are some students using core and there are some using standard in the same class. And because of that closeness of the series and the way the chapters have been structured, that's certainly a possibility. And that's something I have done in my own classes at school, 7, 8, and 9, not so much at 10 because of the differing pathways once you get to that level. That's another possibility. Or even if students are being withdrawn from class, the core series might come in handy there as well.
Thanks, David. There was
could I add, Claire, just to Elijah's question, particularly Elijah, which makes perfect sense, about the dumb kids. If you've got the 2 textbooks in the class, how do you help address that issue? And we get it, and kids feel it and know it, and some kids can be pretty nasty about it and so on. I think the idea is, Elijah, to strengthen that individual who's got that core book and go, my book is helping me with where I'm at. What's going to help me to continue to feel dumb is continue to have work that's not matched to my skill level. And so really what I've got is a book that's meeting me where I'm at. And where I'm at is not going to define where I'm going to finish. And somehow, like at some schools, like imagine the student who comes back and talks to the students in assembly, and I used the core series in year 9, and now I've just completed my degree in mathematics at university or something like that, because that's possible, and so hopefully what helps a student feel proud and comfortable with their book is the success and the progress they're making. And, with maybe a goal that maybe next year they might not be on the core book and so on. So just hopefully encouraging, and it might need to be quiet and in private to 1 or 2 students that, I believe in you and I'm glad you've got a book that's suiting you at the moment.
Thanks, Justin. Jen, could you also think about this question and so how it relates to senior pathways and their use of time?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I really like doing in my classroom is like choose your challenge. So taking the textbook exercise and choosing questions that I kind of categorize. Some teachers use like mild, slightly spicy, extra hot, or you can do like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. And the kids then pick what level they want to attempt. So if you've got students who are feeling pretty confident in a particular topic, rather than them having to start at question 1, which are often those like understanding basic kind of questions, they can jump straight up to question 6 and start with those problem solving or reasoning challenges. And for me, it was really important that it didn't feel like more capable students were having to do more maths than others. Like, I don't think maths should be a punishment where like if you were good at it, you should do more of it. So I think having them as a teacher being a bit discerning about what problems you want to assign, but also then allowing the student to go, well, I'm a bit unsure, or I was away yesterday, so like I'm a little bit behind, so maybe I'll start at the 1 star question. But as soon as I feel like I've got it, I can jump up to a 2 star. And once I've completed that level, I feel like I've achieved something. So they can walk out of that room, kind of like how Justin said, feeling like they have made progress within that lesson.
And we have the working programs to help the teachers pick out those questions, right? Justin, I know you've done a lot of work on the teacher resources, so like chapter tests and things, and that helps, doesn't it? Because they're in both the standard and the core books, but they're also at the appropriate level. So could you have a kind of say something about how those kind of resources help teachers to, have teachers differentiating for these students?
Yes. I think David mentioned, Claire, in his early talk, was about how closely matched those additional resources are to the textbook and the examples. And I shouldn't admit this why I've got fellow authors on here, but it's quite a nice job to do to write some of these, because all I need to do is change a few numbers and I change a slight little diagram. And because intentionally we're not trying to, like, part of it's a little bit boring and not very creative, because I want to write this really beautiful creative question, like a couple of those you shared, Claire, about the OLNA question. Like, what a fun little kind of question. That's the quirkiness of us weird math people. But for the resources, for the ease and the success rate for the students and the ease for the teachers, they are so beautifully matched. And so here's your opportunity. We had to go at it today, try this one tonight, or let's tomorrow have a check in there. And then at the end of the week when we're doing our tests, there's no surprises really, is kind of, I think, one way of saying it. And so therefore, if you're managing the textbook and the workload and then the differentiated tests of test A's and B's and C's and so on for the textbook as well. So I think it does help the student meet with success, Claire.
Thank you. So we had a question about teacher resources, so the supporting teachers, so things like teacher notes, that kind of thing. So David, do you think you could talk about the resources that we've got that support teachers in their teaching, so those notes and those kind of things?
Absolutely. So all the teacher resources that one would expect or were available in the old Cambridge series that people might be familiar with are still all there. But a lot of the new resources also come with teacher resources. So the modelling activities, a lot of the investigations, the digital and computational thinking tasks, all of those have suggested solutions and ideas. Where might a student have difficulty in this particular part of the investigation? Suggested solutions. All the rubrics are there as well on the teacher resources, as well as all the tests, the worksheets and the quizzes and things that people might be familiar with. But all the new features as well, like all the skill sheets that have been written just for this WA series, all the PowerPoint presentations, the fully worked solutions for every question and all the way through, and the videos for every single example. And all those things are on the teacher resource site and are often presented in different ways. So teachers have flexibility to be able to print those and maybe alter them. For example, with the rubrics for the modelling tasks, they may wish to alter the numbers so it suits their school system. So it's not out of 25, it might be out of 20, say. So all those things are there, and any new resource is available in various forms so teachers can use them the way that they wish.
Thanks. Just to directly go to, I think I hope I pronounce this correctly, for Kwane's question. So we have these teacher notes that we used to have in a print book, but it's so in the digital teacher book, you can see little notes for teachers on advice on the lesson starter and the key ideas and the gold star questions to just give like hints about starting a lesson and extra little activities, which they're great little notes there. I might ask you all about the modelling to the activities that we have to address the curriculum. I know we've covered it a bit, but the difference between the print book modelling and the supplementary modelling tasks, and how they differently address the WA curriculum points on modelling. And would like to volunteer to take that one, David or Jen.
We'll go first, Jen, on that one.
I can if you like. I think obviously we're all kind of figuring out modelling this year for the first time, and so any resources that we kind of can get a hold of are sort of really useful and at least give teachers a starting point. I think the key thing from SCASA is that, modelling at years 7 to 10 is not an assessment. It's not something that you run that you give marks to. It is like a problem that students can look at and solve in a practical context, and they choose the maths and how they might want to solve it, and then they evaluate the like the reasonableness of their conclusion. Like, does my answer make sense? So David, you might want to talk to a little bit about the specific resources we have that kind of fit with that.
Yeah, so the ones that appear in the print book, as you said, Jen, are slightly more scaffolded because we wanted to make sure there was an easy entry for all students, and then students could go off with that print version and hopefully get most of the way through the task without having to ask the teacher every 3 seconds on what they might do. So there's that context, and then there's that preliminary task to warm them up to the mathematics that might sit behind the modelling task. And then the task itself, it looks like it's scaffolded to a degree, and then students can work through those parts of the modelling process that are highlighted in the Western Australian curriculum, but be encouraged through that scaffolded way to try to produce a good modelling task, be encouraged to reflect and show the mathematics, and then write up their solutions so they're communicating. And then with the extra modelling tasks that are available on the teacher site, there is a slightly less scaffolded structure. So students have more of an opportunity to really have a go at a modelling task without that scaffolded feel as much as what is in the print book.
Thank you, David and Jennifer. So I'm going to wrap up now. So thank you everyone for your questions. If we didn't get to you, then we'll follow up via email. And of course, if you think of something later on, feel free to send those in to us and we'll respond when we can. But that's it from David, Jennifer, Justin, and myself. And thank you for that really comprehensive overview of the new WA core series and our resources. And I'll now hand back to Nicole.
A big thank you to the author team for taking us through today's webinar. I hope you all enjoyed the presentations. Before we go, I'd like to take a couple of minutes of your time to run through the interactive textbook and online teaching suite. An interactive textbook is included with the print copy of the textbook. It includes the following features: videos for every worked example, downloadable targeted skill sheets and worksheets, a rollover and audio glossary, walkthroughs, Desmos tools, success criteria checklists, auto mark quizzes, workspaces for all exercise questions, self-assessment tools, Scorcher competition, access to more hot maths, and the offline textbook. The online teaching suite will include access to the diagnostics assessment tool, the online numeracy success tool, teacher notes, task manager, test generator, access to workspaces, full student interactive textbook, reporting suite, plus downloadable lesson summaries, PowerPoint format, chapter tests including the answers, targeted skill sheets, answers with work solutions, planning documents, investigations, literacy activities, maths at work, and skill and drill worksheets. The Essential Maths Core print and digital is $74.95 and a digital only price of $59.95. Teacher resources are available with schools that book list or purchase class sets. Please reach out for further information on pricing or if you would like us to arrange a quote on your behalf. I would like to finish off by providing mine and Deborah Wilson's contact details. Deborah is looking after our WA regional schools. We are both happy to arrange appointments to demonstrate the resources and answer any further questions you might have. Thank you once again for your time, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this afternoon's webinar, and I wish you all a lovely evening.